So if you haven't already, follow us on our social media to keep on track with what we're going through, keep up to date with what we're going through. Next month we're doing neurological conditions and nerve conditions. So we have all of our different links in our link tree to sign up to email lists, looking at our YouTube channel because we do record our meetings and while we live stream them. And you can find all of our more detailed presentations on each monthly topic also on our link tree. So
and you should shout out next week's event.
Oh, that is a very good point. Next week, we're focusing on POTS. We have a POTS for POTS event where you can come in person. We're going to have just an in-person meeting where we have a lot of flower pots and we can paint them and decorate them. And we're going to be breaking them also and gluing them back together. It's a Japanese art style that I'm blanking on the word for. It starts with a K. But it should be a really fun event. And then while we're waiting for the pots to dry, when we put them back together, we'll talk about what POTS is and just have like a little hangout and see what else people are interested to see for next semester and this semester. So some disclaimers, none of what we're talking about is medical advice. If you're concerned about any of these issues that we talk about, please talk to your doctor. And our guest speakers' experiences don't represent everyone who has these conditions. We want to make that known. There's a very wide spectrum for a lot of the conditions we talk about. So just keep that in mind as well. So this month we're focusing on congenital heart disease, hemophilia, and MALS, median arcuate ligament syndrome. And some takeaways from I keep wanting to say last week's meeting, last 2 weeks ago. So last meeting is that CHD is where there are one or more issues with the structure of the heart of someone since they were born. And they can be minor, ranging to more severe. Some people have symptoms, some people don't. And it all depends on the person. Hemophilia is a gene mutation that severely reduces the blood's ability to clot. So like if you get cut, for example, like the bleeding can't necessarily stop that easily on its own, so you have to be very careful. And hemophilia can again range from being minor, moderate, to severe. It all depends on the person. And the MALS is a vascular compression syndrome that reduces blood flow to organs in the upper abdomen. And there's only one cure for it, which very loosely saying cure. It's surgery, but MALS can continue to happen over time. So surgery isn't necessarily a permanent fix. And also the most important thing we harp on is don't judge others by their outward appearance. You never know what someone's dealing with on the inside, whether that be actual medical conditions, mental health, or just situations that happen in life. So we all have different things we deal with, whether it be a headache or a chronic illness, and just be kind to others and understanding when you can. So a brief overview of what MALS actually looks like. You can see that the ligament runs across the aorta without interfering with the celiac artery, but with MALS, it's out of place and it puts pressure on the artery, and it can cause a variety of symptoms because of that. So, like I said, we have some lovely guest speakers who are going to share their experiences with us today. We have Sarah and Ainsley, so thank you guys. If you want to do a brief introduction of you, and if you feel comfortable, share what you have. And again, please follow us on our social media to keep up to date with what we're doing.
So I can go first, I guess. My name is Sarah, Sunnyside Up 21, as you see there. There's a lot wrong with me, but that's okay. So biggest, I guess, would be Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which has contributed to having the diagnosis of MALS, along with several other illnesses that I deal with, such as mast cell activation syndrome. I have common variable immune deficiency and a few other things, POTS, like you've spoke of. So yeah, I'll be talking about my experience with MALS and then also having chronic illness and going to nursing school.
I'm Ainsley. I am a student at Loyola, senior. So, but I was actually diagnosed with a rare disease when I was 3 or 2. I was 2. So I will be talking about that and the effects of treatment and everything.
And Ainsley is one of our awesome board members.
Yes, she's on our research team. So, so what's your experience with your conditions, if you don't mind sharing? Like, what are your worst symptoms? When did you start experiencing symptoms? Where does your story begin?
Okay. So my story actually begins way back in 2003. I have no memory of it, so I'm literally reading off of my diagnoses. But I had, oh geez, tumor on my jaw. And then they also found a mass in my sinus cavity, and they ran the jaw tumor wasn't like anything, but the one in my nasal cavity was Langerhans cell histiocytosis. And yeah, so I started treatment almost immediately. After my diagnosis on August 26th of 2003. And then I also had 4 reoccurrences throughout my childhood. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about your symptoms and what you kind of deal with on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I'm old. I'm 30, but that's okay. So this goes way back to the 90s. But I had stomach aches all the time growing up, and like when you're little and you're like, oh, my tummy hurts, they're just like, oh, you don't want to go to school, or oh, you're trying to get out of something. So everybody just kind of brushed under the rug. And even when I went to the doctor and they would like, push on your abdomen, like, oh, does this hurt? I would always tell them yes when it was like right up under my breastbone. I would always say yes, and the doctor's like, oh, you're just a drama queen. Fast forward a lot of years, I was not a drama queen, and I actually went to he's a cardiologist, electrophysiologist, and he's like, okay, I see all of these people and you all have similar problems, so we're going to test for everything. And I'd never seen a doctor like that before. And he did a Doppler, so like an ultrasound, but on the veins and the major blood vessels of the body. And we found that I had like a 78% occlusion in my oh my gosh, like it, but what the mouse does. My brain is not working. My the celiac artery was like 78% occluded. So we went in for a CT, and it showed that it was really occluded as well. And I had the anatomy for the mouse. I was scheduled for a celiac plexus block, which is when they go in through your back and they inject like a nerve block into the nerves, the ganglion that gives that pain stimulus for that area. And I was actually admitted to the hospital like 3 days before the block, so I never ended up having it done. And I had to have a J tube put in for other issues. And they just went ahead and did the mouse surgery at that time. So I just, it was a 2-for-1 special with my J tube and my mouse surgery. So I still have some pain. It's been coming back because it's been almost exactly 2 years since that happened. And like you said, mouths can return. So we're thinking that's kind of what's contributing to the increase of pain.
That makes a lot of sense. So you kind of spoke on this a little bit already. With getting diagnosed, you went to a doctor where they just kind of tested for everything. So what was that process like? Did it take a long time? How many tests?
Yes.
Done?
So I came across this doctor through a Facebook, like a POTS Facebook group, and that's what I really needed help with. And I went to him and said, hey, I need POTS help. And he was like, okay, cool, except for I know you people, us Ehlers-Danlos people. And he decided that, everything else needed to be done as well. So it started, this was in July. No, it was definitely like July of 2020. And it took through October. It was Halloween that I had my surgery. So it was from like either the very beginning of July or the very end of June, all the way through October before we did anything was actually really done. But there were 3 or 4 different tests that I did. And I actually, like, my timeline was very abnormal. A lot of people end up going through testing for years and years, or having people just straight up ignore them for years. And I actually got really lucky having a doctor that was very familiar with it.
I know Ainsley, you can't really speak too much on getting diagnosed since you got diagnosed at such a young age. But could you guys talk about what makes your conditions better? Have you found any treatment options that help or make things worse?
Yeah, so I actually underwent 6 rounds of chemo and 2 rounds of IVIG Gamma Guard IV infusion, and I actually ended up being allergic to IVIG, but that was their one thing they knew would kind of kick this. And LCH is where your Langerhans cells combine with your white and red blood cells and start attacking your body. And since it is in cells that everyone has in their body, it is known as the adult silent killer, because while it's in remission, or while you have been announced in remission for as long as I have, it still reoccurs if in adults who have survived LCH usually have a reoccurrence of LCH because it is in the cells in your body. So while I am not still undergoing treatment, that thought is always in the back of my head. So, yeah.
That's a lot.
Yep.
So for me with MALS, as you said, surgery is really the only thing that will fix it. As far as the pain, like as I started getting pain now, the heating pad is really all I do. I just kind of deal with it and go on with my day. If I can't, then I'll just curl up with my heating pad for a bit and just take a nap.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Can't deal with life, take a nap. That's what I do.
So Ainsley, I know you can't again really speak to this too much since you were more or less kind of born into this because you don't remember a time where you didn't have these conditions. But what has your conditions changed for you? Has it changed your ability to do things you used to do? What has it changed for you in your life?
So I guess I can go ahead and speak to this. MALS specifically has not had a huge impact on my life, but all of the other conditions that I have definitely have impacted my life. Probably the biggest one, and I don't even think I said it, is gastroparesis. My stomach just stopped doing its job. So I do have a feeding tube, and I've been tube fed for just over 2 years now. So that has been a huge shift for me, because I went from being able to eat like an entire buffet practically to now I can't do that anymore. And I also had to stop playing sports and doing active things when I was younger because my body was falling apart from the Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
I know that feeling.
So I actually can somewhat speak to this. So with my case, I do not have a cerebellum. My cancer completely invaded my cerebellum and destroyed it, along with my pituitary gland. So I cannot control how much I drink or go to the bathroom. So I could potentially drown myself without even realizing it, because I can't tell, my brain can't tell my body that you're not thirsty, do not drink. And then I should not be able to walk. I should not be able to be functioning without a cerebellum. A lot of people don't understand how I'm walking, talking, doing everything without a cerebellum. And I do remember when this started affecting my balance, and I would fall, like just walking the halls in my elementary school. I would get tired all the time. So like, you know how like nap time is supposed to stop after a certain point in kindergarten? It never really stopped for me because that was an effect of my chemo and everything. And also I in kindergarten was in a coma for a week, and that's usually when they start pulling plugs on little children, which is terrible, but it's when vital organs start shutting down. I actually woke up right before they called the team, but I had no water in my body, like none. So through that, we figured out that my body retains water when I am sick, and will keep it for store it wherever. So, and with it being an autoimmune disease, when I get the flu, when I get a common cold, I am knocked down. I am literally I've been out of commission for the last 3 weeks because I had the flu and then COVID. So my body takes a toll every time I get sick. And like when people are like, you're being dramatic, I'm always like, no, I'm not. Like, I know my body more than an outsider would. I know I'm feeling this. I know when my body says nope. Like I go to bed at like 9 because that's when my body is like, nope, no more. So yeah.
So I can actually relate to that with my immune deficiency. I've also been on the IVIG, and getting sick just completely takes me out. A few, I guess like 2 summers ago, I got, they talk about babies getting RSV and how you get sick from that. I got RSV, and in adults, it's just supposed to be like a little cold. It's like a few days and you're over it. It took me from like July to October to actually be over it. And even then I had a cough for a while, and it takes a lot out of you. And I don't think people really know what it's like, how important your immune system is, and how, people with COVID, a lot of people have learned more about it, but just wanted to throw that in there. I understand to a degree how you feel about being sick and stuff.
Yeah, I think Sarah, and I can also speak to that as well.
Yes.
Other Sarah. Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, Ainsley, because we did touch on a couple months ago, medical gaslighting. That's like a super important thing too. Not even just medical gaslighting, just gaslighting period, because a lot of people don't understand the toll that it does take on people's bodies. Again, like we're suffering with invisible illnesses. It's something that no one can really see, which is why we're trying to bring attention to it with things like this and talking about it and trying to make more open dialogue about things. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. what advice would you guys give to someone who's newly diagnosed with any of the conditions we've been talking about, or they're suspected of having some sort of circulatory or hematological condition?
I think my biggest piece of advice is to do research and actually research, not just polling people on Instagram, like find published articles and journals and talk to doctors and other professionals. Because while it is, if you go onto Instagram right now and you search vascular compressions or MALS or SMAS or any of those, you're going to find a lot of people and a lot of facts that aren't necessarily the real facts. So it's important to do your own, make sure you're actually getting real information and not just what's sensational, but also make sure you stand your ground when you're talking to professionals and other people who just may not accept that these are real things, because some people don't think that these conditions exist. They think it's all in your head. And like you said about medical gaslighting, it's real and it's very detrimental, and it can be very difficult, especially when all you want is just to feel better.
I would say trust your gut. If you think something is wrong, you go to the doctor, you seek help, and you stand up for yourself. Because I have have recently transferred care from Lurie Children's, where I got most of my, or all of my medical attention and help, to Northwestern. And it took me, I think, 5 months of me calling and saying I have diabetes insipidus, and they're like, no, that doesn't exist. And I'm like, yes, it does. I'm on medication. I've been on medication for it since I was 3. And also when I had gallbladder issues for 5.5 years before it got attention, because my gallbladder was actually leaking acid all over my body. Basically, my esophagus and my colon were both lined in stomach acid burns, because doctors did not listen to me 5.5 years ago. And I did get it removed, but I had to be persistent and also go around the doctors who really weren't listening to me. And it was my pediatrician who was like, you're attention seeking, you're making these up, or she just threw lactose intolerance on top. And so I eventually went around her and went straight to a gastroenterologist. And the first day I saw him, he was like, let me get an ultrasound of your stomach right now. He was like, your gallbladder is 5 times the size it should be. There is something wrong. So they did the colonoscopy and endoscopy and realized that my pediatrician had once again messed up, because she was the pediatrician who told my mom she was crazy when she took me to the doctor. So just trust your gut if something is wrong with you or your child. And be persistent about it and go around the doctors who tell you you're crazy, or
Yeah.
And that.
No one stands up for you. The only person you can is you. So also, I just want to briefly mention, anyone in the chat who does have questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat, or interrupt at any time. Same for anyone in person. If you have any questions, please speak up. But if you had to pick something for the public to know about circulatory conditions or just invisible illnesses in general, what would you want them to know?
So I actually had a conversation about this with a friend yesterday because I'm pretty outward about everything I go through on my Instagram. And I tell my story and pretty much everybody knows everything about me. And I'd said that I'd posted in my story that I was going to be speaking at this meeting, and this friend was like, just curious, are your illnesses really still invisible if you talk about them all the time and you're very outward about all of them? And the answer is yes. So it does not matter how long somebody has known that I have illnesses or that I have disabilities, like they're still there, whether like they're invisible or how much I talk about them or not. If I walked into Target right now, and Target's my happy place, so that's why I chose Target. If I walked in there right now, nobody would know that anything is wrong with me, but underneath my shirt, I have like 2 feeding tubes and a port and scars all over my abdomen. Like there's a lot going on, and sometimes I use a wheelchair and sometimes I use crutches, so it's a little less invisible, but it doesn't matter how, I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't matter how much you speak to it. There's always going to be people who doubt you or don't believe that it's a real thing. And how you choose to handle that is really up to you. You can choose to be mad about it and hate everybody, or you can just kind of choose to educate as you go and do what you can. Everybody still has a lot to learn about everything. You can't know everything in the world. So you just kind of have to know that you can educate somebody, but not everybody's going to know exactly what's going on with you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry that your friend said that. Like, that's very insensitive. Like, you don't tell someone who has like an amputated leg, well, is it still an issue for you? Like, if you're
right,
like, what? It doesn't go away.
right.
You can't see
You
it.
kind of get used to it a little bit
Yeah.
more, I guess. So doesn't mean it's not still a struggle.
For sure.
And that's why we have this club.
You said that very flawlessly, I want to say. I was also thinking the same thing. I guess for me, is even if, like, for me, I get people saying, well, you've survived. You're a survivor of cancer. You're cured. Now what? And I'm always like, well, first of all, it's not gone. It'll never be fully gone from my body. And what's next is to continue to raise awareness for this disease and try to find a reason why it has become now 1 in every 500,000. When I was diagnosed, I was one of 6 people who had it in the world. So yeah, I just want to raise awareness and like try to find some reason this is occurring much more often. And yes, I have my hunch that it has something to do with climate change and something to do with the natural gases that are being released, but I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that could contribute. So contrasting to that, if doctors were to know one thing about circulatory or hematological conditions or invisible illnesses in general, what would you want it to be?
They hurt and we're not faking.
Yep.
Very succinct, very valid.
I can't tell you how many different people I went to, and not just for this one issue, but over the years, how many different doctors or professionals or whoever I saw, and the amount of times my pediatrician literally almost killed me at one point because I was being very allergic to my allergy shots, and they told me it wasn't possible. And I went home and had my first ever anaphylactic reaction and literally almost died. And I was just I was told I was just being dramatic. So no, this is very real. I know that there are people in the world that fake disorders for whatever reason, but that is not the vast majority of people, and we just want to be better. We just want help.
I also want to add, like, we are not hypochondriacs. I, even by family members, have been told, you're a hypochondriac. You're not, this isn't actually happening. You're not this sick. And yeah, I am. So, like, I have really had to fight for telling people this is real. And yeah.
I also get family members that like to, like if I am eating something because I'm an emotional eater, it makes me sick. My stomach doesn't work right, so I get sick if I eat. And my family would be like, "Oh, it's so good to see you eating again. It's so good to know that you're better." I'm like, "Thanks, but no, that's not. That's awkward. Not really better."
Yeah, for sure. I had a thought and it left my mind, but in the meantime, is there anything else you guys want to share or add that we didn't ask questions about or go over? Or Sarah, do you have any Sarah Haynes, do you have any questions for the other Sarah or anyone else that we didn't go over?
Well, we have nothing in the chat right now, but I know the other Sarah, we wanted to talk about briefly what it was like going through nursing school, especially with chronic illnesses.
Yes, that's a big one.
Yes. So this is my second time in school. So I got my bachelor's degree a while back. And I was undiagnosed going through that. So it was rough because there was stuff going on, but I had no idea what, and I didn't have any answers. So going into it this time, I at least had that going for me. Like I had answers as to what was going on, but my issues had like gotten a lot worse. So, and if you're not familiar with nursing school, it's hard and it sucks, but it's great at the same time. So it's all I've ever wanted, and I'm so excited I'm finally at the very end of it. But it's been really hard. I am lucky that my program is online, so I am able to budget my energy a little better. But it's going to school with a chronic illness is really hard as it is. And if you're in any sort of rigorous program, then you can relate to this, or any sort of educational program, because it's hard. But you have to know, do I have enough energy to go and get all this work done that I need to? Do I have the mental stamina to sit there and do this? Have I prepared enough for this test? But have I also like given myself enough rest so that my brain can actually function well enough for this test? And for me, like I ended up having like 5 major surgeries in the last 6 months because I kept getting infection after infection, and I was septic, and like it was ridiculous. And so I took my first critical care test right after I got out of the hospital, like literally the next day. And it was, it's just stuff like that, trying to balance it all. But it's a lot about, and I will say this for anybody who's going through anything in any level of schooling, be open with your professors, talk with your staff, your faculty, and let them know what's going on. You don't have to give them like a full, like, here's everything that's ever happened to me in my life. But if you tell them, hey, I have this illness and I'm really struggling with getting my notes, just listening to your lectures, can I have the PowerPoint slides or whatever it is? A lot of times, even without like written accommodations, professors will be really understanding and will help you out, because at the end of the day, they really should want their students to do well. But some professors aren't that way. But yeah, it's a lot about budgeting time and remembering what your goals are, but also making sure that you listen to your body so you don't completely overdo it. Because then you can't do anything if you are just totally spent.
Sure. Yeah, props to you. That's really hard to go through. Congrats.
Thank you. I'm very excited, and I just got my dream job too. I'll be a PICU nurse starting in February.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions at all in the chat or in the room? No?
Nothing in the chat.
No. Well, some final thoughts. Thank you guys so much for sharing your time with us and sharing your experiences and being open and vulnerable. We really appreciate it. We love creating open dialogue, and I hope that everyone got something from this. I know I did. For those of you on Loyola's campus, next week, so October 26th at this 7:30, same time, in the same room, LSB 212, we'll have our Pots for Pots event. So we hope you join us for that.
What a pot might look like.
Yeah, Sarah has a good example. So hopefully we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight. And have a good rest of your week.
Yes, thank you very much.
And if y'all want to follow me or reach out to me on Instagram if you have any questions at any time, I love talking in general. So feel free to reach out to me for whatever.
Same goes for me. If you see me on campus, say, hey, hi, how you doing? See how I'm feeling too. Don't just walk by. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, you guys. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.